we have the great privilege to have here with us Mr. Professor Friedrich Dünkel, Vice-Rector of the University of Greifswald. Mr. Professor, tell us please some words about this workshop in Romania, Juvenile Justice System, Comparative Perspective in the European Context.
Well, this workshop reflects somehow the research we are conducting since about 5 years at the Department of Criminologie in Greifswald, which was a project which was funded by the European Union in order to collect information and data about the development of juvenile justice in Europe, with special regard to the Council of Europe's recommendations on juvenile justice and on human rights perspectives in juvenile justice. And that is why we have included all member states of the European Union on the one hand, but also further candidate states such as Croatia or Turkey or Serbia and so on. So we have collected the data about 35 states in Europe, and according to a very similar outline, all the reports are collected in a 4 volumes book on juvenile justice in Europe. And what we wanted to do now is to present some of the major results to the Romanian Academy and also the colleagues from Romania, and discuss with them about the new trends and the new developments in juvenile justice in Romania and in Germany and in other European countries. And one of the results is that we have seen major changes, particularly in the Middle and Eastern European countries, which have experienced social change since the end of the 80s, and then after that a dramatic change in law reforms on the one hand, but also in juvenile delinquency changes and major challenges to the justice systems and juvenile justice systems in particular. Therefore, also new alternatives such as mediation, victim-offender reconciliation, and so on, have got a major importance and have experienced interest from the law reform makers. And we are very optimistic that East and West Europe come closer and have the same trends and develop somehow the same structures, although every country has its own traditions and has to follow the procedure of reform, which is sometimes slower, sometimes faster, but under the same umbrella of human rights standards.
What about the juvenile justice system in Romania? What steps we must do for improving it?
First of all, I would say it is important to explain the public the necessity of having a separate juvenile justice system, and to accept that in juvenile justice it is not a system to punish juveniles, but it is more to educate them, to prevent further crime, and to give juveniles a realistic chance to integrate into society. We want them not to expel or to make them outsiders, but we want them to integrate. We need our juveniles, we need our youth for the further development of our society. So it would be a disaster to just put them in prisons or in educational institutions without anything doing with them. But we have good experiences in many countries what to do instead of such repressive forms of punishment, to apply educational alternative sanctions and Romania has made great progress, I would say, the system is developing. What maybe should be considered is that you must also have special courts and special judges. You have, I think, a model, as far as I know, in Brasov. I don't know if I speak this word rightly, but Brasov. Okay, that's sorry. And this could be an option to evaluate the experiences there and maybe to transfer them to other districts and other courts, and to have specialists, judges, prosecutors, but also social workers who are working with juveniles and can provide the adequate reactions or sanctions for juveniles offending.
In those cases, is mediation a real solution?
Mediation is one of the most promising solutions, I would say, because it makes the offender aware about the victim's suffering by being confronted with the victim personally, and to come to a solution is a kind of peacemaking between victim and offender, but also between victim, offender and the society. So it is a very important solution for having a more peaceful and a more a society which is ready to integrate all victims, offenders, and to thus prevent crime. This is the main objective, naturally, to make the offender aware what he has done and to take responsibility. On the other side, to give the victim his interests in getting an excuse, getting to know what happened to and why it happened. And so this is a quite, for me, it's really, our legislator, when drafting the laws in 1990, on where we introduced mediation into the law, he said mediation is the most promising alternative to the more repressive sanctions. And indeed, it has developed very much, although we have to confess that it is only maybe 5 to 10% of the cases who are really going through mediation procedures, and the far most cases are getting some caution, some fine, or some other educational measure, and so it could be further developed, certainly, because victims normally are ready to go through a mediation procedure, or also conferencing systems where the family is also involved, the family of the offender, the family of the victim maybe, and others, neighbors, and so, which is just a new development in Belgium, Northern Ireland, or another few countries coming from New Zealand and Australian experiences. Yes, but I would, well, one condition for effectively integrating restorative justice or mediation into the system is that we need personnel which is educated in mediation. We need mediators. In Germany we have different schools for mediation. We have now master programs where you can get educated as a mediator and get a professional training for that within the probation service, but also in universities, in schools of social work. So this is quite large programs and quite a large range of people we get through these programs. But in the beginning, in the 1980s, we had only social workers, and they all had to go through a further education, getting the experience of mediation, which is different from the normal social work for offenders or the social work for victims. It's a mediator's
30 years ago.
Yes, it's only It started about mid-80s, so it's 25, 26 years ago, isn't it? No, 25 years ago about. So it's a rather short story, but only after 5 years already we had a major law reform introducing on the legal base mediation on all levels of the juvenile criminal procedure. And then in the 90s, it was also implemented into the general criminal law. So it was in the Penal Code and in the Criminal Procedure Act in 1999. And so nowadays the legal situation is quite perfect, but it is still, also in Germany, although we have a long tradition, it is still the kind of fight to convince also prosecutors and to say, okay, this is better than doing application to the court or so, but we first should try to get a mediation. And I think it is similar in all European countries. It's a perfect idea, but it could be extended in practice.
Thank you very much for promoting alternative dispute resolution and mediation in Romania. Mm-hmm. And I hope we'll see you again on similar cases.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I enjoy the stay here in Romania.
It's a privilege for us. Thank you.
Thank you.